Come in any seated position on your mats, keeping your spine erect and back straight, face relaxed, eyes closed. Get all your attention and focus on the breath. We're not trying to control or manage the breath here. Just observe the breath. And let's start chanting Om 3 times, followed by the prayer. Om. Om. ॐ योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचा मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोतं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिम् ॐ Open your eyes. For today's session, I suggest that you try to be as comfortable in your seated position as possible. Okay, because we will be seated throughout, and if you need to give some support to your back, if you need to use pillow, or if you want to sit on pillow, or if you want to go against the wall and give some support your back with some backrest, you can do that. Okay, that's because we would it will be better if we try not to move throughout the session, and if our asan, that is the seated position, is completely stable. Okay, so you should be very, very comfortable with your legs, with your back, with your neck. So if you are not used to be sitting in cross leg position for 40-45 minutes, and if this is something that you are doing for the first time, then I really suggest that you take some support. Yeah, okay. So we are going to be talking, so I will be talking about Om, and then we will practice it. Om, and basically the humming sound. Okay, so there are two ways of looking at this entire science and philosophy both. Okay, so the first way is to start asking how, right? How does Om impact us? And what's the different kind of research that has gone through the science of Om, or why should we chant Om, and how does it really impact our nervous system, or does it really impact our nervous system, or is it just the texts that are telling us to chant Om and we are following the texts. Okay, so that's one way of exploring it. Another way of exploring it is to experience it. Okay, it is to experience it. So there are two ways how we can learn, right? We can basically learn things when a teacher teaches us or tells us. We can learn things if we read it in some text which we believe in. Okay, not any random text, right? Then there is another way of learning where when it is direct perception. Okay, that's another way of learning. Pratyaksha, I see it, so I have to believe in it. This exists because I've seen it, I have witnessed it, right? So I believe in it. And there's another way of learning which is called inference or anuman. Okay, so that way we learn from others' experiences and then we draw an inference out of it. We say that, our what is tradition, what is parampara, that is all inference learning, because um, our ancestors did something in a particular way. Some of us believed in that, some of us did not believe in it. Okay, those who believed in it continued to do it. Those who did not believe in it probably made some corrections in it, or course correction happened, and then that knowledge, that learning has come to us through parampara. So that learning is mostly by inference, because we probably have not really experienced it, we have never seen it, but we just believe in it because it has come to us by through parampara. So that's another way of learning. And there's another way of learning which is called experiential learning. Okay, so that experiential learning is basically learning through your own experience. Okay, so then you don't need anybody else to tell you if this is right or wrong, or you don't need any external proof for it. So now when we are talking about say we are talking about humming today, we are talking about Om today. Okay, we are also probably talking about pranayam today. Now even if all of us are not practicing pranayam daily for 15 20 minutes, half an hour, 30, 40 minutes, even if we are not doing that, we believe in pranayam, most of us believe in pranayam. That's because we believe that breath is our life, and if we learn to breathe correctly, probably if we try to manage, or if we learn to manage our intake of oxygen and pushing out of carbon dioxide well, then probably that's going to help us. We believe in that. Okay, why do we believe in that though we are not practicing it daily? We believe in that because that is something we perceive as our physical body, that is directly related to the body, the physical body, that we can touch and smell and feel and taste. So anything that is connected with the gross body, the body that we can perceive with all our senses, it is easier to believe in that thing. Okay, because we think that that's going to directly benefit me, that it has a direct benefit. Okay, but when things start going subtle, from gross to subtle, so when we are talking about movements, I talk about raising the arm up, raising the arm sideways up, I talk about lifting the leg, easier to understand, right? I just tell you raise your right hand up, I tell you lift your right leg up, very easy to understand. Now when I give you instruction about your breath, it becomes subtle, right? It becomes subtle. Plus, there's variation in the speed of breathing for everyone. The pace is different. So if I'm giving you an instruction to inhale and then I say exhale, by the time I say exhale, probably a few of you have not even finished inhaling. A few of you probably have finished inhalation and exhalation twice. Okay, so it is difficult to understand it. It is difficult to perceive it because it is becoming subtle. Now, if I start talking about mind, from breath to mind, it is going to become subtler. The moment I say anger, okay, what anger means to each of us is completely different. We understand anger completely differently. It is very, very, very subtle and it is very personal. It is specific to me. It is that subtle, right? Now, when I go further deep and say I am now talking about consciousness, what do we understand by consciousness? It is the subtlest to understand and to perceive. When I'm talking about consciousness or existence, my consciousness, how do I perceive my consciousness? It goes beyond my body, it goes beyond my mind, it goes beyond my emotions, it goes beyond my thoughts. The fact that I'm conscious right now and talking to you, the fact that you are probably consciously listening to me, who tells you that you are conscious or not conscious? Though there are hundreds of thoughts that are running in your mind right now, you're still listening to me. There's something still going in some part of your brain. Who is that? What is that entity which is making you feel all of this, or probably which is aware that you are listening to the lecture, which is witnessing that you are in front of the Zoom screen listening to the lecture? Is it outside you or it is inside you? What is that entity? This is very subtle. Now then our brain starts getting confused because we are basically at the most used to our brain. The perception that we are talking about, we can either perceive through the body, we can perceive through the mind, we can perceive through the brain thoughts. So when we are talking about five senses, there are karmendriyas, so our organs of action, five karmendriyas. Okay, then there are five senses of knowledge, jnanendriyas, through which we perceive knowledge. And then there is mind, manas, which is ubhayendriya. It is called as ubhayendriya. Ubhay means both. So it is also the organ of action, karmendriya, and also the organ of knowledge, jnanendriya. So we can at the most understand till this point. And when things start going subtle, because it becomes very difficult to perceive with the limited set of sense objects or sense organs that we have, not sense objects, sense organs that we have, we stop believing in it or we do not practice it. That is because our sense organs are used to perceiving certain sense objects that can be easily perceived by them, and we believe that there nothing else can exist beyond our known sense organs or our known sense capacities. Now the moment we say that, we are basically stopping a possibility there. We are blocking a possibility there. There is a possibility, but we are not ready to welcome it, or we are not ready to let it enter. So this whole science or philosophy, both of yoga, and Om is an integral part of it. So that's why I'm talking about yoga, not really Om, is about experience. It is experiential learning. Even Swami Vivekananda in his Raja Yoga says the same thing. Swami Vivekananda was someone who was a man of rationality. Okay, he believed in rationality. He himself said that yoga is about experience. You experience it and then either accept it or reject it. But don't stop there. Don't start asking for, what is the proof? What is the proof? Then you are limiting the possibility for yourself. If we first want to gather all the proofs and then start practicing, or we just want to start practice and start experiencing it and then either reject or believe in it for yourself. It is for yourself. It's not for the whole humanity that we are talking about here. Okay, and unfortunately there's limited research that has gone into yoga. We all know that, but fortunately it has started happening now. Very late, but it is happening now. Okay, so just keep this in mind. I'm just giving you a context, and then now we will try to understand Om and the hum. Okay, so this comes to us from various Upanishads, like Katha Upanishad talks about Om. Mandukya Upanishad talks a lot about Om. Mandukya Upanishad tells us that there are 4 states of consciousness. And these 4 states of consciousness are mapped to the 4 parts of Om. It is Chatushpada. Pada means limbs. So states of consciousness has 4 limbs. It is Chatushpada. That's what Mandukya Upanishad tells us. Okay. The first is the state of awakening, Jagruta Sthana or Jagrutavastha. So Mandukya Upanishad says that the state of awakening, Jagruta Sthana, is Bahish Pradnya and Sthula Bhug. Bahish Pradnya. What does Bahish Pradnya means? Bahish, external. Pradnya means cognition. Okay, if we have to talk in real modern terminology. External cognition. What is this external cognition? It is the cognition that we can make or that happens through our, what I was talking about, through our known sense organs. That is Bahish Pradnya. Okay, and it is also Sthula Bhug. Sthula means gross. It can perceive only gross objects. So when we are in the state of awakening, when we are awake right now, when we are awake, our eyes are on the Zoom screen. So you can perceive me. You can see me, what I'm wearing, what am I talking. Your ears can hear me. So all your sense organs are active and you are perceiving the whole experience through your sense organs. So that is Bahish Pradnya. And Sthula Bhug only can perceive gross objects. Sthula means gross. Bhug is to enjoy. Bhokta is the one who enjoys. Sthula Bhug. Okay, so that state of awakening, Jagruta Avastha, is Bahish Pradnya Sthula Bhug. And it is that the name of that state is Vaishvanara. It's just for your information. This is Vaishvanara. Now, we also know that Om has three parts to it, A, U, and Hum, the This the first part, maps to the state of awakening or Jagrutavastha. Okay, is about Jagrutasthana, where your senses are outwards. Now let's come to the second one, which is U in Om. And as per the state of consciousness, the second state of consciousness is Swapna, Swapnasthana. What happens when we are dreaming is our senses are inwards, they are not going out. It is not Bahish Pradnya, it is exactly opposite of Bahish Pradnya. So it is Anta Pradnya. Okay, the senses are going inwards, and it is also called Pravrivikta Bhug. Means we are sensing subtle objects. So when we are dreaming, are we present in the state of dream? Yes, we are very much present in the state of dream. Now, when I say we or I am present in the state of dream. What is that I? That we will come to that when we talk about the fourth state of consciousness. So if I know that I'm dreaming or I experience dream, that dream is basically an expression of whatever is going on within me. So that is the state of swapna when I am antapradnya, my senses are turning inwards. Now there is third state of consciousness. Okay, third state of consciousness, that is deep sleep, supta. It is ananda bhug. It wants to enjoy bliss and ananda. Okay, and it is chetomukh. We saw bahish pradnya, anta pradnya. So this is neither bahish nor anta. This is a state of unification. It is all of this is united here. So that is the state of deep sleep or suptavastha. This suptavastha is mapped to the hum, the in Om, a, u, and the last part. Okay, now just try to visualize this whole symbol of Om. In Devanagari, how we write Om. Not in Devanagari, there's no how, we can't write Om as such in Roman. We can just write O or OM or AUM. But try to visualize the whole symbol of Om. Now there is a dot on top, Bindu. That dot represents the fourth state of consciousness. Chatushpada I was talking about. So this is this fourth state of consciousness. In Mandukya Upanishad, this state is not named anything, or it is, even in English, it's just called the fourth, Chaturtha. It is just the fourth. And then in different Vedantic scriptures, it was eventually called Turiya, Turiyavastha. What is this Turiyavastha? Okay, this Turiyavastha is something where you are not dreaming, where you are not sleeping. It is not Bahish Pradnya, it is not Antar Pradnya. So it goes like this: Na Anta Pradnyam, not turning inwards, Na Bahish Pradnyam, not turning outwards, Na Ubhayata Pradnyam, not both, like it is in deep sleep. Okay, Na Pradnyana Ghana. I'll read it out and tell the meaning. Adrushtam. Adrushtam means not seen. Avyavaharyam, agrahyam, alakshanam, achintyam, avyapadeshyam. So this all means that nor conscious to the external world, nor conscious to the internal world, or neither both. It is unseen, adrishyam, beyond empirical dealings of vyavaharyam. Because when we are in jagrutavastha and when our senses are going outwards, that means we are in transaction with the world, external world. There's always some kind of vyavahar happening, right? There's always some transaction when we are jagruta. So that is avyavaharam, beyond empirical dealings, beyond the grasp of the organs of actions, as I said. Unfearable, unthinkable, undescribable, whose valid proof consists in the single belief in the self experience. Valid proof, pramana, consists in the single belief which is in the self, in which all the phenomenon sees, no events happening, nothing is happening as such. It is only the state of witness. You're just witnessing. Okay, so that is that Turiya Avastha, which is the Chaturtha, the fourth. And Om maps to each of this. A maps to Jagruta, U maps to Swapna, Hum maps to deep sleep, Supta, and that Bindu maps to Turiya, the fourth. Now, how do we experience this when we are chanting Om? Okay, we all know a, u, ma. If you chant a, u, ma with this awareness now, that you are transitioning from the state of awakening to the dream, to the deep sleep. And then the fourth is that transcendental consciousness, where you are going beyond everything, you transcend. Where does that come in? It is the end of your Omkar, where there comes a natural pause. After you finish your Om, one Om, before you start the next one, before you awaken again, before you are awake again, there comes a pause. Now we will be able to experience this only when we take that pause. But if we are in a hurry to chant the next one and the next one and the next one, we will not be able to experience Turiya. Okay, so when we are chanting, the pause is that bindu, that dot, which is the fourth state of consciousness or Turiya. Okay, and when the more we start experiencing Turiya, it is going to have immense impact on our nervous system in calming us down. Okay, now it is about practice. It is not that, today you chant Om and then your nervous system is suddenly undergone change. It is not that. So there's a lot of research that has gone through and it is published in the scientific journal of yoga, where they have actually analyzed the impact of Om chanting 12 minutes every day for 12 weeks and for 8 weeks. Okay, and then they have also analyzed what was the impact in cognition, in the function of sleep, in overall quality of life, right, and on your mood. It has immense impact if the practice is long practice, if it is done daily. And so Om chanting these days is also suggested. It is a potential option for the treatment of major depressive disorder. Okay, so that research is it's going on, but what we can do is we can experience it for ourselves. Okay, so today when we are chanting, I just want you to have this context and think of traveling through these 4 states of consciousness and take a pause when you are trying to experience Turiya. We are not going to rush into the next one. Okay. So let's start the practice for the next 30 minutes. As I said, we will not be moving. We'll try to stay still in seated posture. If you are not comfortable in seated, you can even sit on chair or sofa. So come in comfortable position and close your eyes. If you are wearing specs, I suggest you remove your spectacles. Spine erect. Keep your palms in any comfortable position. If you are keeping your palms on your thighs, then I suggest that let the palms be open to the ceiling. Or you can simply interlock your fingers and keep your palms on your lap in a relaxed position. Try to sit as effortlessly as possible, dropping all your weight on the mat. Let your whole body sink into the mat. Your face relaxed, shoulders relaxed, neck relaxed, legs relaxed, ankles relaxed, arms relaxed. Remove any tension in any part of the body. If you are excessively arching your back to sit straight, relax your back. No need to arch your back. Just sit comfortably. Distributing your weight equally on both the buttocks. Trying to create a state of motionlessness in your body. Now get all your attention at the base of your body, which is connecting to the ground right now. The central bone at the end of your spine, your root chakra, which is connected to the ground right now. Get all your focus at the root chakra, Mooladhara chakra. And let's chant the Bija mantra, a monosyllable mantra of your root chakra, which is Lam, L-A-M, Lam. We'll chant it 5 times without straining the vocal cords. All your focus at the root chakra, the bone that's connected to the ground. Take a deep breath in and start chanting with exhalation. Lam. lam, 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 just be there with your breath. Now slowly move up and become aware of your tailbone, your sacral chakra, Swadhisthana chakra, slightly above the root chakra. Just become aware of the tailbone. With complete awareness and focus to this part of the body, tailbone, we chant the Bija mantra of this chakra, which is VAM, V-A-M, VAM. Let's start. Inhale and start. VAM. 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 Now move up slightly, become aware of the navel region, Manipura chakra, your solar plexus. Get all your attention and awareness to Manipura chakra at your navel region. And we chant the Bija mantra RAM, R-A-M. Inhale and start. Ram. 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 Move up from your navel to your heart, center of the heart, Anahata Chakra, heart plexus. All your awareness towards your heart. And let's chant Yam, Y-A-M. Yam. 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 Now move slightly up and become aware of the throat center, Vishuddhi Chakra, the center of your throat. And we chant Hum, H-A-M. Hum. 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 Moving up at the center of the eyebrows, Ajna Chakra. We chant Ooh, just Ooh. Let's start. Oh. moving up at the crown, Sahasrara Chakra, we chant Om. Let's chant Om 11 times with complete awareness of transitioning from Jagruta to Swapna to Supta and experiencing Turiya, the pause. Oh. 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 Just be there. Let's chant Om 7 times again. Take a deep breath in and start. Om. Stay with the pause. Let's chant 3 more times. Inhale and start. Om. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Rub your palms over each other. Cover your face, eyes. Open your eyes. Remove your palms.